I woke up to the sound of someone knocking, not on the front door, but from inside the walls. 3 short taps, then silence. It was 2:16 a.m. The kind of silence after that felt too thick to be natural, like the house was waiting. I didn't move, just stared at the ceiling in the dark, listening. The air in my bedroom was cold, but not in a normal way. It was the kind of cold that made your skin prickle, like the air itself didn't want you here. It came again, behind the wall directly above my head. I turned toward the noise instinctively, and the old wooden floor creaked under my mattress. The sound stopped. Then, a soft scrape, like nails dragging over drywall. That's when I remembered. This was my 3rd night in the new house. I had just moved into my cousin Theo's place after he was sent to live with an aunt up north. Something about his parents, my great uncle and aunt, not trusting him anymore. There'd been some kind of incident, but no one would say exactly what happened. Just lots of sideways glances and tense silences. The kind of family drama that gets swept under the rug and sealed in concrete. The house was small, crooked in the way old buildings are, sitting right at the edge of town where streetlights thin out and the woods begin. No neighbors close enough to hear if you screamed. When I moved in, the landlord left a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. No welcome note, no receipt, just 6 words written in blocky, urgent handwriting. Don't answer knocking after 2:13. I'd laughed, thought it was a joke, probably something Theo made up to scare me. But now, lying in bed with that knocking coming from inside the walls, I wasn't laughing. At breakfast that morning, I'd found claw marks under the kitchen table. I ran my fingers across them. They were shallow, but deliberate. 4 of them, spaced evenly like fingers. I told myself it was probably a dog. Maybe Theo had one. Only, there was no sign of a pet. No bowls, no leash, no smell. And the scratch marks weren't anywhere else in the house. Just there, just beneath where you'd sit and eat. Theo's room was at the end of the hall. I hadn't gone in there yet. I wasn't told not to, but something about it felt off limits. Not forbidden, just wrong. Like the kind of wrong you feel in your spine. The door was locked from the inside, the handle ice cold. Tonight, after the knocking stopped, I finally got out of bed. I didn't want to, but the sound wasn't letting me sleep. I walked out into the hallway in bare feet, every board groaning like it was protesting my steps. The air was still cold, but there was something else now. A smell. Damp, metallic, like rusted nails and wet paper. The hallway stretched toward Theo's room. I turned the opposite way and headed for the kitchen. I told myself I was getting a glass of water, that I wasn't scared, that the sound was probably the pipes or a squirrel in the attic. But halfway to the kitchen, I stopped. The door to Theo's room was open. It hadn't been open before. I know it hadn't. I'd tried the handle yesterday and it didn't budge. Now it stood halfway ajar, a black void beyond it. I didn't look directly at it. I couldn't. Every instinct in my body screamed not to, but I could feel it, a pressure in the air like the room was breathing, and it was breathing in. I backed away slowly and returned to my bedroom, locking the door behind me. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I tried to ignore everything, made coffee, ate toast, opened a window to let in the stale spring air. Birds chirped, a lawnmower buzzed somewhere in the distance. Normal things. But the open door down the hall still loomed in my mind, like it was watching me. At noon, I finally worked up the nerve to peek inside Theo's room. It was bare. No furniture, no posters, no bed. Just a black mark on the far wall, about chest height. It looked like soot, but when I touched it, it felt dry, brittle, like ash mixed with glue. I pulled my hand back and the mark stayed on my skin, faint but visible. The shape of a handprint. Not mine. I went to wash it off, but no matter how much I scrubbed, the print didn't fade. I told myself it was a stain. Maybe it would wear off. That night, the knocking returned. Right on time, 2:16 a.m. Only this time, it was louder, closer. Not behind the walls anymore, but in the hallway. I could hear the floorboards flex under weight that didn't belong there. Slow steps, one after another, coming toward my room. I held my breath. The steps stopped just outside my door. Then, I didn't move. Something was on the other side, waiting, listening. Then, in a voice I recognized, it whispered, "You forgot to lock the door." It was Theo's voice, but I'd never heard him speak. I haven't spoken to him in years, and even if I had, he wasn't here anymore. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, but it wasn't there. Just the handprint, now blacker, darker, smeared across the sheet like it had bled out of my skin. I snapped. I jumped out of bed and flung the door open. The hallway was empty. Silence. Not even the wind. I turned on every light in the house, checked every room, every window. Nothing. But when I got to Theo's room, I saw something new. Carved into the wall above the black smear in tiny, shallow letters. "You heard it too." I stood frozen, staring at the words carved into the wall. "You heard it too." The writing was etched so finely, so deliberately, it must have taken time, which meant Theo, or someone else, had stood here, scraping these words into the plaster, while something waited just beyond the walls. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. When morning came, I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it. Sleep deprivation, anxiety. But the handprint was still on my palm like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I wore gloves that day. That afternoon, I found a box in the attic, an old one, covered in a layer of dust so thick it looked like fur. The attic itself was strange, freezing cold, even though the sun outside was warm. There was no insulation up there, just exposed beams and brittle air. The box had Theo's name on it. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside were notebooks, 6 of them, all the same, black covers, frayed corners, filled with jagged handwriting. I flipped through the first one. Each page was a mess. Scribbles, sentences halfway crossed out, diagrams of the house, symbols I didn't recognize. Some pages were torn out entirely. Others were just phrases written over and over in bold, frantic loops. Don't listen to it. It remembers. The knocking is not outside. Do not follow the sound. Do not open the door. The last phrase was on nearly every page in the 6th notebook, sometimes so hard pressed into the paper it tore through to the next one. I closed the box and took it down to the kitchen. I didn't know what to do with it. Burn it, maybe. But part of me wanted to keep reading, as if understanding what Theo had seen might somehow protect me from it. That night, I sat up in bed, lights on, notebooks spread across my blanket like a barrier. I had a flashlight in one hand, a kitchen knife in the other. The sun went down, and the house got quiet again. Not just silent, dead, like sound itself had left. No cars, no wind, no pipes groaning, nothing. The air was thick with something I couldn't name, a kind of pressure behind the eyes. I flipped to a random page in Notebook 3. It's not the knocking that's dangerous, it's the listening. I put the book down. 2 a.m. I turned the flashlight off to conserve the battery. 2:13 a.m. I stared at the door. 2:14. I stood up. 2:15. I walked slowly toward the door, hand on the knob. I wasn't going to open it. I just wanted to be ready. 2:16. Nothing. I waited. The silence was louder than noise. Then, the sound of my bedroom window sliding open. I spun around, heart hammering. The window was cracked. Cold air poured in like smoke. I ran to it, slammed it shut, latched the lock and stepped back, trembling, No one was outside, but the condensation on the glass showed one perfect circle, like a mouth pressed against it. And in the fog of my own breath, I saw words forming slowly as if drawn by an invisible finger. "You're almost ready." I stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. It crashed to the floor and went dark. The sound snapped something loose in the house. The pipes groaned. The fridge clicked. The wind returned. But it didn't feel like a return to normal. It felt like the house had decided I was ready too. The next morning, I called Theo. He didn't answer, but I left a message. I didn't explain much, just asked if he could call me back. I used to think he was weird, twitchy, always muttering to himself. Now I wondered how long he'd been hearing things in the walls. The handprint had moved. I don't know how else to explain it. It had been on my palm, then my bedsheet. But now it was on the ceiling of the hallway above my door. Each day it faded in one place and reappeared somewhere else. I started to count how long it took, usually 8 to 10 hours before it moved again. It never vanished completely. I kept reading the notebooks. One entry stood out, dated just 4 days before Theo left. "There's a reason it knocks. It waits for you to answer. But sometimes if it wants in, it doesn't need your permission." That night I set up cameras, one in the hallway, one in the living room, one outside the front door. If something was moving around in the house, I wanted proof. 2 a.m. I sat in bed with the monitors glowing softly beside me. 2:16. Nothing. 2:17. The hallway cam flickered, then went black. 2:18. The front door camera caught something. A blur. Fast. Like someone ran past it. Backwards. Frame by frame, I saw it move from the edge of the porch into the shadows. But there were no footsteps. No sound. I rewound. Watched it again. The blur had no face. Just a blank head. And fingers longer than they should be, dragging along the side of the house as it passed. I stared at the screen, stomach turning. Then, from my left, a knock, not on the door. On the wall behind my headboard. 3 short taps. I turned off the monitor. I sat in bed, eyes wide, waiting. Then I heard a drawer in the kitchen slide open, then slam shut, then silence again. The handprint was now on the inside of my bedroom door. Black, large, still wet. I didn't open the door. I just stared at the handprint, smeared across the inside like it had been slapped there while I was asleep. The problem was, I hadn't been asleep. I barely even blinked that night. I watched it for hours. The edges of the print didn't drip or smudge. It just stayed there glistening like it was fresh. It was darker than blood, thicker, almost tar-like. I thought about wiping it off, but something in me said, "No, don't touch it." I laid a towel across the bottom of the door, shut off the lights, and got back into bed. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard movement, small shifting sounds, like something dragging itself along the hallway carpet in slow, deliberate pulls. That morning, I checked the hallway cam footage. Nothing. It had shut off at 2:17 a.m. and stayed dead for 6 hours before turning back on. The other cameras? Same thing. Same timestamp. The only difference was one extra frame on the outside camera. Just one, where a second blur appeared, standing still this time. Facing the lens, not moving, no eyes, no mouth, just present, like it knew I was watching it and didn't care. I unplugged the cameras and packed them away. I went into town later that day. The hardware store guy, Gary, asked how the house was treating me. I told him it was fine. He nodded like he didn't believe me. Then he said, "If you start hearing the knocking, don't respond." I froze. "What?" He stared at me a moment. "Theo used to come in here, bought wire, padlocks, thermometers, said his house was getting colder at night, like something was leaking in from somewhere else." I didn't say anything. "He got real pale those last few weeks. kept saying it was following him into his dreams, said it learned how to make itself smaller. I left without buying anything. That night, I locked every window, every door, pushed furniture in front of them, checked every closet, left every light on. I even tried sleeping in the bathtub, behind a locked bathroom door, clutching the flashlight like it was holy. But at 2:16 a.m., the knocking still came. Only now it wasn't alone. There was breathing, not loud, soft, deep, just on the other side of the bathroom wall. Then a whisper.
"Come out. You need to see."
I held the flashlight tighter, heart pounding, jaw clenched. More whispers followed, overlapping like voices in a crowded room. But too close, too real.
"Do you see it yet? Let it in. You're already marked. Don't pretend you're not curious."
I shoved a towel in my ears, turned on the faucet to drown them out. But the water came out black. I stared at the faucet in horror as a thick, inky sludge dripped out, filling the sink. The smell hit me next. Rotten eggs and wet copper, the stench of something ancient and wrong. The water stopped flowing after a few seconds, as if the house had gotten bored. I got out of the tub, shivering, and wiped my hands on the curtain. The mirror was fogged over even though there was no steam. And through the fog, 3 words were written in backward script, like someone had scrawled it from the other side of the glass. "Open the door." I didn't. I ran to the hallway, past Theo's open room, which now had dozens of handprints all across the walls, floor, and ceiling, and locked myself in the kitchen. I sat at the table with every light blazing and tried not to think. The notebooks were still there. I flipped to a page near the back of the last one. The writing had changed. It was more deliberate now, more structured. The knocking isn't to be let in. It's to remind you that it's already here. I slammed the book shut. There was a knock on the window behind me. I didn't turn around, I didn't move, just stared forward, breath shallow. Then came the sound of nails dragging across glass, slow, deliberate, taunting. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. I answered, hand shaking. There was breathing on the other end. Slow, steady. Then, in my own voice, "Don't look behind you." I dropped the phone and bolted for my room. When I reached the door, the handprint was gone. But my bed had changed. Something was lying under the blanket. The shape of a body, perfectly still. I stood in the doorway, frozen. My own voice echoed again, this time from the hallway behind me. "You're asleep. Wake up." I turned around. No one was there. When I looked back, the bed was empty. No indentation, no blanket. Just smooth, untouched sheets, like no one had ever been there at all. I ran. I got in my car and drove. Didn't pack. Didn't lock the door. Just drove. I made it 20 miles before I pulled over and slept in a gas station lot. When I woke up, the black handprint was on my windshield. I stared at the handprint on the windshield for a long time. It wasn't just the fact that it was there. It was how it was there. From the inside. Perfectly centered, oily and black, smudged just enough to suggest movement. Like it had pressed against the glass while I slept, watching. The gas station attendant knocked on my window around 6 a.m. I startled so hard I nearly hit the horn. "You okay?" he asked through the glass. I forced a nod. He glanced at the print. "That from your hand?" I didn't answer. By the time I went inside to grab coffee, the print was gone. Not faded, not smeared, just gone, like it had never been there. But I knew better. I drove back to the house around noon. I didn't want to. Every cell in my body screamed to leave, to never look back. But something about the notebooks, the handprints, the whispers. I knew it wouldn't stop just because I left. Something had followed me, and I needed to understand what it was before it fully got inside. The house looked different in daylight. Smaller, crooked, less like a home and more like a body left slumped on the side of the road, the kind of thing that used to be alive but now just hosted other things. When I stepped inside, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Burnt air and old water. The kind of scent you'd expect in a place that had been underwater for years, then suddenly exposed. The second thing I noticed was the silence. Not quiet. Silence. The kind that buzzes in your skull. I walked to the kitchen. The notebooks were gone. All 6. The box, too. In their place was a single piece of paper laid perfectly flat on the table. It was the same one the landlord left me my first night. The one that had said, "Don't answer knocking after 2:13. Only now it had new writing below the original message. 3 fresh lines. If you've heard it, it's inside. If you've seen it, it's awake. If you've spoken back, it's yours." I read the lines out loud without thinking. The moment I did, something shifted. The ceiling creaked. The walls pulsed. I swear they moved, like lungs inhaling. Then, a door slammed upstairs. Theo's room. I ran, not away, toward it. I don't know why. Instinct, maybe. Or desperation. But I sprinted up the stairs and down the hallway, my heart hammering so hard it drowned out the silence. The door to Theo's room was wide open. And inside, for the first time, there was furniture. A desk, a mirror, a chair in the corner. None of it had been there before. The desk drawers were open, empty. The chair faced the corner, turned away from me. And the mirror. I walked toward it slowly. The room was dim, the light overhead flickering like a dying bulb. But the mirror was perfectly clear. And it didn't reflect the room. It showed something else entirely. I stared. The scene inside the mirror was wrong. A hallway, but not the one in the house. It was narrower, wet. The walls were coated in a dark film that looked like mold but shimmered like oil. The floor sagged in the middle. At the far end was a door, wooden, rotted, held shut with hands. Dozens of them. Black, glistening clawed hands, like the ones that had left prints all over my home. They weren't holding the door closed. They were holding it open. And something beyond the door was pushing through. I staggered back, gasping. The moment I looked away, the mirror went blank. Just my reflection now. Pale, shaking, eyes bloodshot. Behind me, in the reflection, the chair in the corner had turned. I hadn't heard it move. I turned around. No one was in the chair, but the back of it was warm, like someone had been sitting in it moments ago. I looked back at the mirror. There was writing on the glass now, scratched in. Ask it. I didn't know what that meant, but something deep in me did. I opened my mouth before I could stop myself and whispered, "What are you?" The answer didn't come from the mirror. It came from the house. Every wall vibrated. The light shattered overhead. And then, the voice. Not from a mouth, not in the air, but inside me, under my ribs, behind my eyes.
"You already know."
I collapsed. Darkness swallowed everything. I woke up in the bathtub, lights off, water running. But the tub was empty, bone dry, and the faucet wasn't dripping water, it was dripping ink. Thick, slow, black drops that hit the porcelain with a noise that sounded like whispers. Drip,
"Leave."
drip,
"You can't."
drip.
"We're still here."
I stood up, weak, shivering. The entire house was dark now. The windows blacked out, no moonlight, no hum of appliances, just darkness and that unbearable silence. I fumbled my way into the hallway, trying to remember where I'd left my phone, but something was waiting for me. The hallway was longer, physically longer, like it had stretched, grown, warped into something unfamiliar. Doors lined both sides now. Too many. I counted 12 on the left, 11 on the right. I knew my house only had 4 bedrooms. I turned around. The bathroom door was gone. The hallway was now endless in both directions. And from behind one of the doors came a sound, not knocking, whispering, in my voice, calling out for help, screaming, pleading, begging to be let out. I stood in the hallway of doors, paralyzed. My own voice echoed softly from behind one of them, not panicked anymore, just calm, distant. "Come on," it said. "Let's just talk." I backed away, but every step I took forward made the door feel closer. The hallway bent, not physically, but visually, like the walls were turning toward me. "I know what you're thinking," my voice said, but it wasn't coming from one door anymore. It was behind every door. It was in the walls, in my chest. "You think you can leave. You think this is still about the house." Suddenly, all the doorknobs began to turn, at once, dozens of them, turning slowly, silently, like they were waiting for me to choose. I spun around and ran, not toward any door, just forward. I ran so far the hallway should have ended, but it didn't. It kept going. The floor curved downward, the walls stretched upward. I realized with a rising dread that I wasn't in the house anymore. I was inside something else, something pretending to be the house. I stopped running. The air was thick and warm, and it smelled like something alive, like breath, like rot, like being inside the throat of a thing that didn't chew, only swallowed. I collapsed against the wall, panting, sweating, and then silence. The kind of silence that comes after a scream. Ahead of me, one of the doors opened. Not swung open, just unlatched. It creaked slowly. A sliver of orange light spilled into the hall. "You want answers?" my voice asked. I stepped toward the door. I didn't want to, but my legs moved on their own. I passed under a flickering bulb that hissed above me like it was boiling. The handprint was on the door now, smeared across it, pulsing slightly, like it had just been pressed there. I pushed it open. Inside was a room I didn't recognize. It was a copy of my old bedroom from when I was a kid. The faded Superman sheets, the toy chest, the nightlight shaped like a rocket. Only it was wrong, too clean, too still, like a set. At the center of the room was a child, maybe 6 or 7, sitting on the edge of the bed, facing the wall. He was humming. Not a song, a pattern. Hum, 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 hum. Then 3 beats of silence. Then again. The same rhythm as the knocking. I stepped closer. "Hey," I said. The boy stopped humming. He turned slowly. He had my face, not as a child, exactly my current face, on a child's body. His eyes were dark, not black, just hollow, like the part of the face where the eyes should have been had sunk in and never come back. He smiled, and in my voice he said, "I let it in." Then his mouth opened wider and wider and wider until it wasn't a face anymore, just an opening, a second mouth, not flesh but space, and from it a long hand reached out, fingers like cords, black, wet, the same handprint that had followed me for days. It touched my chest, and in that moment, I saw everything. I was in Theo's place the night he let it in. I saw it through his eyes, felt the cold when the knocking came, felt the curiosity, the pull, the compulsion to open the door, just once. I saw the door swing wide. I saw the hallway outside stretch, bend, split. I saw the thing enter, but it didn't walk. It spilled in, a noise like cracking knuckles and sighing lungs. It didn't need a shape. It just wore one. At first it wore Theo's mother, then his father, then him, then something else, then nothing. I watched him scream. I watched him write the notebooks. He thought it could be documented, understood. But every word he wrote just fed it, because writing it down was remembering it, and remembering it is inviting it. I saw Theo try to leave, and I saw it follow him. I saw the thing mark him. A smear on the hand, a sound in the ear, a phrase repeated in a dream.
"You're almost ready.
Then I saw me, sleeping in my own bed, not in the house, but long before that, years before. I saw the handprint, faint even then. It had chosen me long ago. I was never sent to live in Theo's house. I always lived there. But the thing made me forget, because forgetting is the first step to believing you're safe, and belief is what it eats. I gasped awake. I was lying in the middle of the living room floor. The lights were off. The house was quiet, normal again, like nothing had happened. I sat up, breath ragged, and looked around. Theo's room was closed again. No extra hallway, no doors, just 4 walls, and silence. But when I stood, the TV turned on, just static. Then, a voice, faint, garbled. It was mine. "Page 5, it said. 1 more to go." And then it laughed. I stared at the screen. Static roared, hissing like white fire, and beneath the noise, my own voice whispered back to me, "1 more to go." I stepped toward the TV and yanked the cord from the wall. The screen blinked out. Silence fell again. But I already knew what it meant. 1 more page. 1 more night. The house had written a story around me, not with ink, but with rooms, memories, scratches, and silence, and I'd walked straight into the final chapter. Something in me changed then, not courage, not defiance, just understanding. It was never the knocking. The knocking was a courtesy, a warning before the next door opened. The horror wasn't outside. It was about what I let in. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't hide. I cleaned the kitchen, took the tape off the windows, turned off every light. At 2:13, I sat in the middle of the living room floor, cross-legged, flashlight in front of me, notebooks beside me, door unlocked, waiting. 2:16 a.m. The knock came. But not on the front door, not on the walls. It came from inside the room, right behind me. I didn't turn around, didn't flinch. I spoke, calm, low, steady. "You don't need to knock anymore." The room cooled instantly, a cold that wasn't temperature but absence, of light, of sound, of meaning. And then the voice answered.
"You finally understand."
I closed my eyes, not out of fear, because I didn't want to see what shape it chose this time. "What are you?" I asked. Same question as before. Same answer. But this time I heard the truth behind it.
I am what you notice and cannot unnotice. I am the sound you almost heard, the thing you nearly remembered. I am what's left after curiosity breaks the lock.
A shape moved around me. Not footsteps, just the air changing places. "Why me?" The voice chuckled, quiet, but not unkind.
Because you listened.
And I remembered. Not just Theo's room, not just the hallway or the handprints or the humming. I remembered the first time I'd heard the knocking. It wasn't last week. It wasn't even this year. It was when I was 8 years old, lying in a bunk bed in my childhood home. 3 soft knocks behind the wall. I'd asked my mom about it. She said it was pipes. She was wrong. And the knock came every year, always on the same night. My birthday. The day I'd been marked. Theo didn't bring it to me. He was sent away because he escaped it. Left it behind in the only place it could stay rooted. This house. It needed a host. It needed a storyteller. And it had chosen me. I stood up, eyes still closed. "Then what happens now?" I asked. The voice was suddenly everywhere, inside me, around me, under the floorboards.
"Now you finish the story."
A crack split across the floor. The house trembled, not violently, but like a deep breath held too long. From the walls, black lines spidered outward, forming words I didn't understand, symbols that weren't drawn but grown. The final notebook appeared on the table behind me, one I'd never seen. Its cover was white, its pages were blank, and there was a pen. I knew what I had to do. That was 4 months ago. The house is empty now, but not abandoned. It lets me stay, as long as I do what it needs. Every night, I sit in the living room and write down what I remember, what it shows me. It gives me visions now. People, places, fragments of lives that never belonged to me, but I remember them anyway. I see what they saw when they opened the door. I document it all, and I write one page at a time. Sometimes the knocking stops for days, weeks, but it always comes back. Always. Because someone somewhere will hear it, and they'll wonder. They'll press their ear against the wall, just to be sure, just to check. And then it begins again. If you're reading this, it means I wrote it down. It means the knocking came again. And this time, it wasn't for me. So here's what you need to know. Don't answer knocking after 2:13. Don't write about it. Don't speak about it. Don't wonder what it is. Don't try to remember when you first heard it. If you already know what I'm talking about, it's too late. And whatever you do, don't turn around. Not yet. Let me finish this last part. The door is already open. It just hasn't let you see. But you'll hear it soon. 3 knocks. Then silence. Then your own voice, from somewhere it shouldn't be. And when you finally do turn around, when you do open the door, just remember one thing. You could have ignored it, but you didn't. And now, it's yours.